our vegetable industry. I always think, we have here in New Zealand, and I'm in the city, but I get out into the country, and especially when I was on the road trip over the holidays and saw our beautiful countryside and just, fields of vegetables. And I grew up in Hawke's Bay, the fruit bowl of New Zealand. I lived on a Watties farm. I think we're so blessed, but there are claims our vegetable industry is under threat due to rising production costs, land shortages, and increasing regulatory pressures. Growers are warning if the situation continues, the country may become more reliant on imported veggies. And that, of course, would drive up prices and reduce food security. Horticulture New Zealand and industry leaders are urging the government to take action, including reducing regulatory burdens and ensuring sufficient land is preserved for food production. They argue that without that, key crops like potatoes, carrots, leafy greens will become less available and more expensive for us. And we're already seeing price hikes at the supermarkets. Some farmers have been forced to cut back on production. John Murphy of Vegetable New Zealand says the current system is broken and local growers are being put out of business. And he joins me now. John, a very good afternoon to you.
G'day, Leah. How you doing?
Well, I'm a little concerned. I mean, gosh, I love my veg, my fruit and veg, and I'm sure most Kiwis do. You've said this isn't just a grower issue, John. It's a public health issue. Can you explain?
Well, all the studies show that increasing consumption of fresh, healthy vegetables in particular has got wide-ranging positive effects well into the future. You're talking about generational effects. And unfortunately, we're seeing a trend where less people are consuming fresh, healthy food. And we, of course, think that starts with ensuring that there's a good supply available nationally. And we're doing our best to do that. And really what we're making public at the moment is that we need to be able to do what we do best, which is grow fresh, healthy vegetables for New Zealanders. And we want the least number of hurdles in the way of doing that, because right now there's a lot of hurdles there. There's a lot.
So this isn't an issue, John, am I correct? That isn't, we're not talking 20, 30 years away. It's here now, isn't it? What's the biggest challenge currently facing growers?
The biggest challenge right now is that we don't have permitted activity. And what we're talking about there is the consent to grow. That is, the conditions on consents vary massively, province to province. And one of the big issues there is that regional authorities get a national policy direction to follow, and they interpret that in various different ways. And what we've seen is there's been an overzealous approach to that. And so we've seen some of our growers, particularly in places of recent times like North Waikato and Horowhenua in particular, who simply can't get consents. And so they spend a lot of their time focusing on getting those consents. Some of them have been doing that for more than a decade and have not reached the hurdles yet. And that means they can't get on with doing what they're good at, which is growing fresh, healthy food. It's really an impossible situation in which to invest in your business and look to the future and do things better.
So you've mentioned Horowhenua, and you said that there's been a very real prospect that growers have been told that they can no longer grow. Why is that? Is it because the land they want the land for housing? Is it costs just too much regulatory issues? What's happening in Horowhenua?
So the issue in Horowhenua is that the council is looking to look at, as they should, look after lakes and rivers in the area, and the nutrient loading in those water bodies is below the standards that we all wanted at. The problem is that if you take vegetable growing away from those areas completely, the issue isn't solved. There are a lot of other contributing factors to the water quality, not least of which is town emissions in the 1980s. So this is not a problem that can be laid at the feet of vegetable growing. The issue is that by simply moving that production out of Horowhenua, you do not get rid of the problem. And in fact, there are studies that have shown that if you do that and move to a less productive area, because there are reasons our growers grow where they do, related to productivity, you get less production, and in fact you may cause more of an environmental impact. So really, there's a very stark choice here. There is trust growers to do the best they can and to improve, or don't have vegetable supply on a national basis. And particularly in those areas, Horowhenua provides 10 to 15% of fresh cut greens, for example. If you take that out of national supply, that is a massive proportion. And that's before you talk about things like cyclones in other areas, where they pick up the slack. And it's quite a network that we have in our markets. And really, we're just asking for regulators to trust the systems that we have. We have very good assurance systems, and we are beginning to make progress with the likes of the Ministry for the Environment in recognising those. But we need regional authorities to listen to what the officials
growers
are saying. Yeah, we do.
What about urban expansion, John? Is that still a real issue? Does that limit the availability of land? I mean, I'm in Auckland. I look at Pukekohe, for example, and all up around the Bombays, and that's some of the most fertile growing grounds in New Zealand, in the North Island. And there's now farms that are just surrounded by housing, and we need houses.
Yeah.
We get that. But I mean, it's changed so much, in 10 years.
It has, and we completely recognise that housing is an absolute need for New Zealanders. That is a need. The risk that we have is that by limiting our practices massively to the point where we're not viable, and saying that we can't put houses on our land, basically the regulators are making our properties ghettos, because it's all well and good to legislate to say you should grow vegetables in a particular spot, but if we're not allowed to actually farm properly in those areas, because of those constraints, then there's actually nothing to be done with it. So that's quite a complicated issue, and I think that there is being progress made on the housing issue. It's good to see. It will continue to be something that needs a focus, but there also needs to be a focus on supply of fresh, healthy food. And that's what we're specifically asking the government to do now. We're saying we must have fresh, healthy food recognised in resource management legislation, so the reforms that are taking place right now.
Oh, yes.
It is ridiculous that fresh, healthy food is not a priority in that legislation. We have a focus on housing, we have a focus on the environment. There must be a focus on fresh, healthy food for our people as well.